Hello, I'm Emily Mills. I am the Media and PR Manager for the Nature Conservancy in Wisconsin, and I am very happy to be joined today with my new coworker, John Schwingle, our brand new Wisconsin Fire Manager for the Nature Conservancy. And we're going to talk a little bit about his role here and the role of prescribed fire, or controlled burns, as they're sometimes called, for land management in Wisconsin specifically, but also generally, and kind of what's going on with prescribed fire right now, given the pandemic situation. So we're hoping to give you some good information and also introduce John more widely. So I'll let him do that though. So John, hi, thanks for joining me on Zoom. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and experience with fire?
I can. Thank you. Basically, my background in fire stretches over 3 decades, working with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources in the Division of Forestry. I've held several positions with the Department of Natural Resources, from forestry technician to a forest ranger to team leader to more recently the area forestry leader. I retired from the Department of Natural Resources earlier in this year. And as part of those different positions that I held, I was involved in suppression, prescribed burning, fire behavior trainings as part of an instructor cadre, teaching others and mentoring new staff. So spans quite a long duration of different activities involved in suppression to prescribed burning.
And I gotta ask, what got you interested in fire and using it for management? What was sort of, well, I don't want to say the spark because that's a terrible pun, but how did you come to this career?
Well, it's a great question. Thank you. For the longest time, while in even grade school aged, I was very interested in natural resources and always knew that I had a passion to work in natural resources. And what led me to the fire program happened when I was a junior in high school. Back in town that I grew up, the local volunteer fire department put together a fire department explorer post and invited young students, young adults to get involved as a volunteer organization at that local fire department. And I knew then I had a passion for fire. The only concern I had was the structural service, though I've got 20 years as a volunteer structural firefighter as well, really was probably not a career option for me because most of those positions are located in urban areas. And I'm a country person at heart and love the rural part of Wisconsin. And so somehow I needed to be able to tie my interest and passion with emergency services and fire with natural resources, and the natural outcome was I think I need to be a forest ranger.
Great. That's a great history, and that makes total sense. So I want to give people a little bit of a sense before we dive into what you're doing with TNC, a little bit more about the Nature Conservancy. We are a global nonprofit formed in 1951. The Wisconsin chapter was formed in 1960, so we're actually celebrating our 60th anniversary this year. The main focus of the Nature Conservancy has always been to protect the land and water upon which all life depends. So largely a land conservation organization, but we have expanded considerably in the last decade or so into 4 main priorities, which are that continued focus on protecting and managing land and water that is super important to whatever state or country or location that it's in, including right here in Wisconsin. And we also now include a broad focus on combating climate change, where we offer science-based approaches to natural climate solutions to mitigate the effects of climate change, protect and improve wetlands, use working woodlands to do carbon sequestration, work with private landowners and other land conservation groups, public agencies, government agencies, tribal agencies, all of that, just to work on that big focus, which also includes then our other 2 priorities, which are to provide food and water sustainably. So we work a lot with farmer-led groups and agricultural organizations on that. And we're also newly in cities doing work to partner with city organizations, governments, things like that, to build healthier cities. So we focus on things like urban heat islands and clean water, clean air, things like that. And all that's happening right here in Wisconsin. Our fledgling urban program is in Milwaukee in large part, but we're also in Green Bay and all over the state with different preserves and working with different agencies on all of these different projects. So all of that mouthful said, I'd love for you to tell us, John, a little bit about the Nature Conservancy and how we use prescribed fire to do our land management and meet our goals here in Wisconsin.
The Nature Conservancy manages approximately 26,000 acres statewide. And of those 26,000 acres, approximately half are fire-dependent ecosystems, meaning that those ecosystems developed over time with natural fires occurring that affected the types of plant and animal communities that exist. And part of that in Nature Conservancy, we're trying to replicate those natural systems to either restore or maintain those different ecosystems. And annually, we're burning approximately 1,000 acres. We also assist our partners, our federal agencies and state agencies with prescribed fire, using our resources of personnel and equipment when appropriate.
And so, can you explain to us why the Nature Conservancy uses prescribed fire, otherwise called controlled burns, as part of its land management?
Yeah, great question. Prescribed fire, as I was saying, is essential as a management tool for those fire-dependent ecosystems, and also to manage and mitigate wildland fire risk. Use of fire, we're able to remove dead and down fuels that accumulate over time. By use of prescribed fire, we can remove those fuels so that if a wildfire were to occur at conditions or periods of time where it's drier, more windy, hotter, you could end up with types of fire behavior that are more extreme, more severe, and could threaten, besides the natural resource base, but also threaten human values, homes, structures, those sorts of things. The other use for control burns or prescribed fire is to improve habitat for those plants and animals that depend on those plants in that ecosystem that's fire dependent. Absence of fire tends to be a bad thing, where we would see invasive species that tend to evade, that aren't fire dependent in these ecosystems. So use of fire is a good management tool to try to reduce the effects of invasive species. The thing about prescribed fire in our land management tool that's near and dear to me as a fire behavior instructor is that using the science of fire behavior, we're able to safely conduct prescribed burning because the science over the last few decades to understand flame lengths and rates of spread that result in different fuel types because of different weather conditions and different topography. Those are fire sciences that all wildland fire fighters and prescribed burn practitioners are in the process of learning, experiencing in curriculum and fire behavior training to understand what the outcomes could be when you combine those three effects of weather, topography, and fuels. That results in an understanding of getting just the right type of fire behavior to meet our land management objective.
And when we're talking about fire, I always think this is interesting. I know I had a perception before I knew anything about this of just big wildfires that I've seen, but prescribed fires are generally very small affairs. Like the flames are not great big walls of flame, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Because of prescribing the weather and the particular fuel conditions that we're looking for to get the particular outcome of flame length and rates of spread to meet our objectives, We're not shooting for the giant conflagration type forest fires, crown fires, etc., that you usually see on the news. Um, those are not the objectives of a prescribed burn program. It's much more controlled. It's much more appropriate fire where we can hit our land management objectives using fire behavior that's under a controlled circumstance.
That makes sense. So I think it's interesting. We're in the middle of what would typically be peak burn season, especially here in Wisconsin. But the program is currently paused. The Nature Conservancy decided a little while ago in tandem with the state stay-at-home order to pause that program. And that's true of other burn programs statewide as well. Can you talk a little bit about why that decision was made?
I can, and it was a very difficult decision, heartbreaking, in fact. Many of us look very much forward to the springtime. We've done all the preparation and the planning for prescribed burning, and we're interested in, after a long enduring winter, to get out in the field and perform our craft of what we've plotted and planned for. Here at the Nature Conservancy, we collaborated with crew and leadership to make a decision that we couldn't provide for the safety of our volunteers, our staff, performing prescribed burns in a crew format, because it takes a large group of people to be able to safely conduct these prescribed burns. And because our volunteers or staff are located in all points around the state, in different areas were being affected by the COVID virus at different rates, we didn't want to commingle crews and have an exposure. We did not think that the risk of having that exposure was worth the gain of the prescribed burn program. Now, there are places in the state where the Department of Natural Resources does not control the regulation for prescribed burning or open burning. And in those areas, it's very likely that folks are doing prescribed burning, either landowners or contractors. And it's our position that we're leaving it to the professionals to make the determination that they can provide safety for their crews as they do safely conduct prescribed burns across the state. So it's not a one-size-fits-all answer. It is what we thought was best at the Nature Conservancy. And for the time being, we're on pause. But we are making plans to move forward. We're looking at other opportunities to participate and assist our partners, our agency partners, with suppression in an emergency standpoint if the need occurs as we go through the spring season. And we're looking forward to coming out of the other side of this, perhaps, and having some summertime burns in different seasons, what we traditionally would be burning in.
And it's not to say some burning has happened before the pause was hit, correct? The Nature Conservancy was able to get some acres covered?
We did. We were very fortunate to have an early start in March. We conducted about 6 to 7 burn unit burns and an in-person field day training session for firefighters, new firefighters, volunteers, and staff that were interested in learning about wildland fire. They were able to participate in an all-day event, learning about tools and pumps. And we used live fire as part of that training exercise at one of our burn units at the Meyer Preserve. So we're fortunate to be able to get a good start. We had a 4-day run of dry weather where we were able to conduct several burns across multiple counties. And now we're just in a temporary pause.
Well, that's good news at least. And I hope that we're able to get back to this good work as soon as possible and as safely as possible. John Schwingle, I want to thank you again for taking time to go over all of this with us today. And welcome aboard the Nature Conservancy in Wisconsin, by the way. I know this is a weird start to a new job, but we're all making do, and I hope you are doing well. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and please, of course, leave any questions you might have in the comments. We'll do our best to answer them as soon as possible. I am Emily Mills once again, and this is John Schwingle, the new fire director for the Nature Conservancy in Wisconsin. Thank you so much and take care.